Robin A. Smith, welcome to Australian Musician Magazine.
My pleasure. Lovely to meet you.
You're bringing Tubular Bells back to Australia in August in a form that we haven't seen before. Before we talk about that, though, where were you when Tubular Bells first came out? Where were you working, and what do you recall about him?
I was a small. Well, no, I don't want to talk about. I was a young emerging musician, as in still at school. I was about 12, and I'm a bit of a freak show, as in I was classically trained from the age of 5, but I don't know, maybe because I had brothers and sisters, but I had an innate love of all other music. So as I was learning all my scales and all my theory and all my and playing Beethoven and Mozart, I was also playing, John Mayall's Blues Breakers and Canned Heat, and ultimately, so when prog rock was sort of coming through with Yes and Pink Floyd and the beginnings of Genesis, I could understand it. So when, and I also, to be honest, I suppose because I've done I was trained classically, I was aware of modern classical music. So to hear this kind of Steve Reich, this minimalistic introduction of which, the beginning of Tubular Bells was intriguing. So yeah, so different to a lot of people. I didn't go I luckily it was the album I heard first, so I heard the whole work in its entirety. Obviously, if you're in America, you only ever heard the theme from The Exorcist. Yeah, and so most people know the first 5 minutes and think they know Tubular Bells, and of course, that's that, and it is an amazing bit, but it's scratching the surface. So yeah, I was young, and I loved it, and I was bowled over by it. And just the depth of it. So I mean, I suppose at that time, because I was learning classical, so I was used to a symphony. So you'd listen to a Beethoven symphony, which goes on for about 50 minutes. Well, suddenly to have a piece of rock music that goes for 50 minutes without a gap, which is extraordinary. It was extraordinary in 1973, and it's pretty extraordinary now. I mean, there's really not much that's come along that has this kind of depth and weight of compositional value. It's extraordinary.
Yeah. In 2024, it's easy to layer music, layer upon layer.
Yeah.
Tell me about the degree of difficulty and the genius in doing what Mike did back in 73.
Oh, it's extraordinary. I mean, it's extraordinary. I mean, I think it was a. I often think about this, and I don't think even Mike can explain it. It's just this point in his life. So he's in the right location. He's at the Manor, Richard Branson's studio there. I mean, he's just there, but he's really kind of there because he's a session musician. So he's an emerging session musician, and he's learned his craft. In fact, I was talking to Sally, his sister, recently. She always says what's amazing is the fact that he never had any musical education at all. He learnt the guitar and the keyboards all by himself. So it's kind of like a partly because of his upbringing. Maybe it was quite insular, and I believe this is true of John Mayer, actually, who's one of my great, probably the guitar hero of these days. And I'm sure I read this book that he lived quite an insular life to a point. That insular life allowed him to come out with this amazing ability, this amazing technique and mastery of his instrument. That's what Mike obviously had done. So he's there, and of course having Tom Newman as his producer and engineer, and just having that relationship and that freedom to self-express was extraordinary. I mean, amazing, and just to have, I suppose, this cohesion between the whole team, that you could fit one section going into another section, and yeah, you're totally right. There wasn't the technology then. There wasn't like, oh, that's no problem. We'll do a click track and then we'll get that digital. No, we'll just put that with that. These are bits of tape with, gaffer tape on them, all safety pins and all that kind of stuff. An amazing feat of engineering, of recording, but also, the thing that goes through it is he must have been so incredibly like a laser-like focus that he was able to take these ideas and intertwine them. I mean, what's amazing, you've got bits, guitar motifs that happen in the first, kind of like 5 minutes of Tubular Bells that reappear towards the end of the album. And you go, well, that's great if you're sat there with your computer and you're scrolling from there to there and there's, but when you're in there and you've got tapes, like falling off the ceiling and you're going, oh, I want to put that bit, that it's extraordinary, amazing. Such a huge feat of creativity, actually, to be honest. And I think that's what people recognized.
Yeah, because as you said, he wasn't trained, so it wasn't written down as a piece of music. It was all in his
Oh
head.
no,
Yeah,
that's kind of where my relationship with Mike came into when he did Tubular Bells 2, because he really needed somebody. So when they did Tubular Bells 1, yes, there was an orchestral version that David Bedford did, but that really was just an orchestral version. When they performed the original Tubular Bells, it really was just musicians, as with many tribute bands, they just kind of sit there and they just play the parts. When it came to Tubular Bells 2, and it's interesting what you're saying, that Tubular Bells 2, then you had the development of all kinds of things. You had, the development of synths that happened, the emergence of samples that were happening. So you had a much more array, but Mike still needed somebody with a musical knowledge to put it all together so that musicians could play it. That's where I came on board, and that was kind of my relationship with Mike. So because he didn't have a particular knowledge of the actual of musical theory or notation, he relied on me for doing that, and it was my honor and pleasure to do that.
yeah. What kind of synthesizers did he use in the original?
I think he was just trying. My goodness me. So synthesizers. By the time we've got to like 1988, 89, you're talking, well, the emergence of the emulator. I mean, a lot of the samples were coming from the emulator, as well as I think we had the Korg with them making their keyboards. You had the M1 and various. Yeah, he loved the M1 actually because it's a beautiful sounding keyboard, and has this lovely, crispy digital sort of resonance to it. So he used that a lot. As well as like turning to Hammond organs and the analog keyboards, but certainly it was the emergence of the Akai samples, the Korg digital keyboards, and obviously the emulator, and can't remember the other one now. The synclavier. I mean, so the synclavier is kind of like hot on its tail. So he was using all this stuff, definitely.
Yeah. So you worked on Tubular Bells 2 and 3. Did the initiative of the 3 versions of the album come from Mike wanting to do it, or was it more commercially driven?
I think it was more. So obviously, number 2 was driven by the record company. He renewed his he renewed his contract. I think he left Virgin and went to Warner's. I could have got that wrong, but I think that's right. But anyway, it's a brand new, and of course they gave him a huge amount of money to sign to them, and a big step to leave Virgin. So they wanted to make a new start. So it was, yes, that was definitely driven by the record company going, this is great. What we want is a brand new version of Tubular Bells to launch this new relationship for the 1990s. Sad to say, I think that was like, it's great because I love Tubular Bells 2. It's beautiful. I love Tubular Bells 3 and what emerged after that. I think the problem is that by that point, him coming up with concepts that he could do with Hairgis Ridge and Ommadawn's and so on and so forth, we're getting it's just getting tougher. I think tougher for the record companies to sell and to, to markets. Slightly laziness, but I think it's much easier for them to go, oh, Tubular Bells 3, as opposed to, some concept name. So yeah, definitely a touch of that. So he was always just trying to tweak that format, which he did in the end. In the end, it kind of just changed completely.
Yeah. So what's the official story on Mike? He's retired from music. Are you still
Yeah, yeah. He kind of retired back in blimey. I'm trying to think now. So in a way, he kind of, I can't remember, Tubular Bells 3, where we performed at the Horse Guards Parade. He did announce to a fan, I think that's 2003, but he announced to the fans that that would be the last time he kind of performed in public. And he just took a step back and went to what he loves doing, which is being creative, recording. He was never one who loved, he's not one of those artists who loves performing in front of people. He gets very nervous. He's a perfectionist. And it's not that he has self-doubt, but I think he's not like, he has to work so hard on it that he puts himself under huge pressure, which he didn't want. So so he took a step back. So I saw him for the Millennium. We performed in Berlin on Millennium Eve. That was amazing. And then ultimately at the 2012 Olympics, which was amazing.
Yeah. So the show that you're bringing to Australia in August,
Yeah.
any changes from the show that toured Europe and the UK recently?
No, it's exactly the same because you guys haven't seen it. You need to see it. No, it is. It's kind of, once I've done all this, then I'll change it a bit. But the point is, this is about Tubular Bells. Everybody goes, oh, you should do Ommadawn, you should do you should do this, you should do that. I've deliberately reimagined Tubular Bells, and I've taken the whole structure of Tubular Bells to the note and respected every single note of composition that Mike did for that work, but just reimagined certain melodies. So, it could be a guitar melody, which is beautiful on the original, but honestly, you hear those melodies played by a cello or a soprano and your heart melts and you go, oh, I'm hearing a composition with fresh ears, and that's what I want to do. So, yeah, and actually, I went to great pain. Well, no, I did. No, because of my respect and love for Mike, I actually went through and I made sure that the tempo is exactly the same as the original record. So you can play the original record with my version and what we perform, and it doesn't change because obviously the nuance and the kind of the fragility, as it were, of that original performance is tantamount. You can actually feel it in some of the sections where it may have been not technically difficult but where he was searching and then he finds it, and it's part of the DNA of Tubular Bells. So that's what we do. So it is reimagined, but it's every single note all the way through, including, oh, spoiler alert, including the hornpipe, whether you like it or not. So you get it.
We spoke about the keyboards that Mike used. What's your stage setup? What do you play live? What's programmed?
Yeah, I play. I mean, the keyboards are live. I play the grand piano and various other keyboards. We have two guitarists who are. That's all. It's all live. Where the technology comes in is just sounds that give that cinematic sense to it. Broadening. I mean, it's like some bits need to sound like a Hans Zimmer score, and you can't do that with 8 people. I mean, you really can't unless you suddenly, for no apparent reason, quadruple the budget, put a symphony orchestra and a choir on there and go, oh, look at us, we're very clever. However, we're never going to be able to do more than one concert because that's the budget. So yeah, it's kind of that. So, but no, the key elements, the guitars, the pianos, the percussion, and the bass, obviously, are all absolutely every note played and performed and done very much with the mentality. Did you ever see the black and white original performance that Mike did,
I,
where
I,
they all sat in a semicircle? It was
I
kind of like the. Hmm?
I vaguely remember it now that you mentioned this.
Yeah, well, it's worth looking. But it's amazing because it was one of the very first broadcasts. I'm just trying to think now. In the UK, we had BBC One and had BBC One, and that was the only channel. And then it must have been 1973 or 74, they emerged BBC Two, which was a big thing in these days. Suddenly you've got two channels on television. Tubular Bells was one of the very first musical performances on that station, and they made it special by recording it, and you saw Mike and all these other amazing musicians, only 8 of them though, performing Tubular Bells in a semicircle, very much hands-on, so you can see each musician working away at each individual part. That's what we try to create here.
Yeah.
So that's what we do on stage.
Did you need to search high and low for the musicians to play this music, or are they people you've worked with before?
Yeah, well, I mean, what's lovely about this, Jay Stapley, who's my primary guitarist, I met Jay years ago, and I because I booked him to do Tubular Bells 2 at the Edinburgh Castle. He was basically, obviously Mike was guitar 1, Jay was guitar 2, because he's a fantastic technician and also has the same style as Mike. So years on, with the absence of Mike, I've asked Jay to be to be Mike Oldfield, really. So he knows how to play very much in the style of Mike, but bringing so much more to the part. So, yeah, it was. I found. I mean, I'm so lucky. I've got the most beautiful singer in Daisy, and Kwasi, who's the cellist, is extraordinary. And it's all about melody and energy and wanting to perform this live to an audience and entertaining. There's nothing worse than seeing 8 musicians on stage playing complicated music who are only interested in playing their own instrument and not engaging with the audience at all. Our adage is making Tubular Bells come alive for the audience and getting them to come on the journey. It's a long, beautiful, beautiful journey that goes through so many highs and lows and peaks and troughs. So it's great that, and that's part of it, all in all.
So why has it become important to you to keep the Tubular Bells flame alive?
But I think because of what I said, I mean, because my respect for Mike, we talked about this in 2012 about doing, and I said, because I've spent my entire career, I've had the most amazing career working with pretty well every major artist in the world as an arranger. So that's my passion. I can't help if I hear something. If I hear something, I immediately try and rearrange it. So just listening and just knowing, uh, yes, I think I've said there are lots of tribute bands out there doing Tubular Bells. That's great, but there's nobody out there doing it in a reimagined way. And I spoke to Mike about that. Let's bring it to a new audience. Let's keep the flame alive. Let's keep the spirit of Tubular Bells going, because it shouldn't just be for, yes, it's a work that is stuck in 1973, and as long as you keep playing it like the album, it's stuck in 1973. I want it to be stuck firmly in where it is, and be able to perform it completely differently in 10 years' time, because it is about his composition. It's an amazing work. It has some beautiful, beautiful melodies, incredible juxtaposition of rhythms, of harmonies, of just the structures are amazing. And just, yes, you've got the minimalistic opening and suddenly you've just got the piano, and then you've got this interweaving of all these other counterpoints going on underneath, like suddenly we turn into a Bach fugue, but it's a 20th century Bach fugue. It's kind of it's the whole prog rock. It's suddenly it stops being what it's supposed to be into something else. Then the next thing you're in the world of beautiful folk music. You know, you're in the world of Elgar and Vaughan Williams before you go into the world of, you know, rock and blues. And then of course you've got the big finale at the end of Act One, where you've got the announcements, the Viv Stansel kind of section. And that's amazing. I mean, the idea of having a piece with a repetitive obbligato going on, again, almost like a Bach, you know, senses of Bach and Handel going on for 12 minutes, just repetitive. And you think, oh my God, but the way it's layered on top, the way it develops and becomes, and then it gets bigger and bigger, bigger, and then the announcements happen, and that's big enough, and then it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So this massive crescendo. So again, you suddenly you're in the world of Ravel's Bolero, but but at the end of the day, you still are playing a progressive rock piece, and but it's just has all this emotion. And then the second half, which a lot of people don't know. I mean, a lot of people do, you know, as I said, if you're in America, you only know the first 5 minutes, but a lot of people only kind of go as far as the announcements and then never turn the record over. And of course, on the second half, you've got all these gems. You've got this kind of, you've got this hypnotic section at the beginning of side two, which again, it's repetitive, but it's taking you on like a mantric journey. And by the end of the piece, where you've got the two guitars section, that's chill. I mean, if that predates so much that Pink Floyd eventually did, but he did that he just kind of created this atmosphere of nothing going on but two guitars soloing over a fairly simple chord sequence. Amazing.
Yeah. Well, Robin, it's been great to chat to you about Tubular Bells, and we look forward to seeing the show in Australia in August.
Oh, fantastic. Lovely to speak to you. And are you going to come to the show?
I hope so, yeah.
No, please do, and come and say hi.